So today we're going to go over introductions where a few of us are going to introduce ourselves. We're going to cover program information, tuition fees and funding, admission requirements, application information, supplemental documentation, supplemental questions, references, and then we're going to take any questions that you have. So Dr. Myers, would you like to go first? And you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry
You're
about that. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your interest in the EdD and educational leadership. I have been in this role for almost 2 years now as the program manager. And I am a recent graduate as well of the PhD program here at the Faculty of Education. So I know both the management role and perspectives as well as student perspectives as well, which helps me in my job. Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, Dr. Myers. Jane, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm the Graduate Affairs Assistant who helps support the Doctor of Education program. I'm the resource and your go-to person when you're here on the program and have questions. I'm the first point of contact. So maybe we'll get to see you in the near future.
Thanks so much, Jane. So my name's Allison Watson. I used to be a graduate affairs assistant, but I've moved over into a recruitment coordinator role. It was a pretty seamless transition. I knew all the programs and everything, so that was great. I have to say I do miss working from home. It is pretty nice though, being back in the office. If I was at home, my little kitty would be up here presenting with me. She was pretty insistent wanting to be in on every staff meeting with me, but she's not happy with me. So let's go into the EdD program information. And Dr. Myers, you would be the person with the most expertise. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
So the EdD in educational leadership is an online professional education degree. You are not required to come to campus, but it's important for me to let you know that all of the courses actually have synchronous session components. Typically what happens is students meet with the course instructor 4 to 5 times a term to have that face-to-face through Zoom online learning. Typically students take 3 years to complete the program. We do have a few who require a bit extra time for a variety of reasons. This is a cohort-based model, which means you are applying to a particular cohort, either K-12 educational leadership, higher educational leadership, or something we call community leadership. And that applies to folks who are in different educational roles that are not in K-12 or higher education. And you move through the program with that particular cohort group. So you're learning together, you're learning from each other. We find it's a very supportive environment for students as they progress through. The program is designed for those who are working full-time. All of our students are full-time employees, and so the program recognizes that you have other commitments outside of your personal commitments, and that we have to schedule things around that type of commitment. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Students are expected to spend 15 to 20 hours per week on their coursework and their program work year-round. This is a year-round degree, which means the summer in particular is very busy. So we also often have students say, well, when do I take vacation? And typically the answer is not during your EdD. Anything else I should add in there, Jane or Allie?
I don't think so. I think you got everything.
Great. There we go. There's the 3 cohorts. And when you apply, you'll find a drop-down menu that asks you to indicate which cohort you're applying to. For the community leadership, we often have folks who are in healthcare education. We have folks who are firefighters, who are police who are involved in educational roles. We have folks who are in accounting type of positions and work with bodies that educate their professionals. So you can see it's quite diverse in terms of what the community leadership might entail. So the program itself As I mentioned, it's a 3-year full-time degree, and each term you have a full set of you have a full course that runs September, December, January to April, and then May to August. In May to August, you'll notice that there are 2 half courses in that time period. And so it's a compressed term in that you have 2 courses in 8 weeks each instead of 2 in 12 weeks each. So people will always tell me there's a lot of work involved and I'm really swamped. But they all get through. And the same with year 2, sorry. Except the summer is a 16-week full course, and that runs May to the end of August. And again, it's very intense. In year 3, the final term, students are writing a dissertation in practice during their fall and winter session. And then in the summer session, there's an examination process that you go through.
Thanks, Dr. Myers. So we're going to flip back over to me. So I'm going to go over the general program cost. So tuition amounts are set each year by Senate, and then they are updated on the fee schedules page for the Office of the Registrar. I will be sending out these slides when the recording is ready. So don't worry about accessing that link right now. I will be sending that information to you. Fees are assessed once each term, fall, winter, and summer. And a lot of people want to prepare. I understand that. Unfortunately, we can't provide an exact amount of tuition for the tuition fees of the program because tuition does increase by up to 8% each academic year. So unfortunately, we can give you an estimate, but not an exact amount. So with that, the program cost, so there are 3 terms and it's for 3 years. So each year has 3 terms in it, fall, winter, and summer. So the program runs September through August each year. And the numbers that I'm pulling are from the 2020-2021 academic year. Tuition and ancillary fees for a Canadian citizen or permanent resident were close to 3,500 Canadian dollars per term. And again, I will be sending these slides out. So you can look at previous tuition fees at the website listed below, and that will list the most up-to-date information that's published by the Office of the Registrar. Another popular question is if we have funding for our EdD students. So the program is fully online, with synchronous learning sessions for each of the courses that you will be in. Because we offer students a flexible learning environment, students are able to maintain employment while they are completing the program. Some employers do provide subsidization or time release for professional learning and professional development of their employees. So as a result, internal funding from the university is not available for the EdD program. However, students do find alternative sources of funding through private financial institutions, provincial governments, and I've included a link for the Government of Canada's Can Learn website. It provides contact information and details about student financial assistance programs. So when you get the slides, definitely take a look at that website. It provides a lot of detail, more than I could put on this slide for you. So because we're in the Faculty of Education, I felt that I should include a pop quiz in this presentation. So pop quiz. How many terms per year are students enrolled in? 1, 2, or 3? Oh, great. Everybody's getting it right. That's exciting. Okay, so second question in this pop quiz. Who likes cats more? Myself, Allison Watson, Dr. Myers, or Jane Gulf? And it is me. I got a little kitty at home. She's so cute. Thanks everybody for participating. Okay, so let's move into the nitty gritty of the application here. So for starting an application, when applicants start the application, they're like, where is this? I'm working in the Faculty of Education. Yes, you are in the Faculty of Education, but if you scroll down, you need to click on Professional Education under the academic program. If you just focus on education, you're not going to find the application for the EdD. You're only going to find the application for our research intensive programs. So make sure under academic program, you click on professional education. From there, the next field that populates is the academic degree. From there, you'll be able to find the Doctor of Education. Okay, so make sure you click on professional education first and then click on Doctor of Education. That's where you'll be able to access the application. Okay. So the admission requirements. So we're looking for a master's degree in the area of educational leadership or educational administration, and that is a preferred degree. Master's degrees in other areas will be considered. Okay, and I will say, if you have questions about your specific degree, send me an email and I can take a look at your degree, and then I'll let you know if it's acceptable. But please know that the admissions committee will consider degrees that are in other areas outside of educational leadership or educational administration. Okay, I'm going to put my email address in the chat here. So it's info.graded@uwo.ca. Okay, so I've put that in the chat. I'm going to spam that to you all throughout this presentation. Okay, so next we're looking for typically an A standing, which is 80% or equivalent in previous graduate work. Okay, normally a minimum of 5 years full-time work experience is what we're looking for. And then formal or informal leadership experience in an educational setting. And you should clearly outline that in your CV or resume, as well as your statement of intent. My recommendation, make it easy for the admissions committee to view your application. Okay, lay it out so that they can definitely see that in your CV, resume, and your statement of intent. So the application deadline and fee. So the deadline for the application is January 15th, and that is to receive all of your documentation. You have to submit your application and all of the necessary documents, as well as we have to receive your references by January 15th. Okay, the application fee is $125 Canadian. It's payable by credit card or money order, but please keep in mind money orders do delay the processing time of your application. If you decide to pay by money order, there are specific instructions to follow for submitting that information, for submitting that money order, and they can be found on our website. So important note, and I can't stress this enough, to be considered for admission, all documents required for your application, including your references, must be submitted by the application deadline. The responsibility rests with the applicant to ensure that all documents, including your references, are submitted by the deadline. Okay. Moving on to supplemental documentation. So we're looking for unofficial transcripts at the time of application. If you are admitted to the program, you will be supplied with instructions for how to submit your official transcripts. So please keep in mind, no paper copies are necessary at the time of application. We're looking for digital unofficial copies. We're looking for your statement of intent, your writing sample, your resume or CV, as well as reference information. So I'm going to go through the statement of intent, writing sample, resume, and reference information in the next few slides. So the statement of intent, and again, I'm going to send these slides out so you'll be able to access the link. So our maximum length for the statement of intent is 500 words. Keep as close to that 500 words as possible. Okay, that is a limit that has been set by the admissions committee. So keep that in mind. So the link above gives in-depth details about what should be included in the statement of intent. And please keep in mind, this is a statement of intent. It is not a letter of intent. You do not need to address this to the admissions committee. Save your words, save your word count for the bulk of the nitty-gritty details that you want to include. Trust me, that 500 words goes fast. Okay, save your words. So for the writing sample, again, the above document gives in-depth details about what should be included, but we are looking for between 15 to 20 pages. The document needs to be double-spaced. It should be, you should write academically within the document. We want to make sure you can write at the scholarly level, which is why we ask for these things, and you must cite your references. Okay, a lot of people use portions of their thesis for their writing sample, their previous thesis work or previous graduate work. So as long as you follow the guideline, your writing sample is acceptable. Moving on to English proficiency scores. So if applicable, so if you have questions about if you have to provide your English proficiency scores, you can email me at that info.graded@uwo.ca. Here's that email again, info.graded@uwo.ca. So email me there if you have any questions. If you've had a name change, a copy of marriage certificate to provide proof of that name change, and that's if applicable. If you were born outside of Canada, you must provide proof of Canadian citizenship, landed immigrant status, or permanent residency, or provide your study permit and student visa when you arrive in Canada. This is an online program, so that actually is not required. Okay, so, but you need to indicate in your application if you are an international student. Okay, and any other information that you feel the admissions committee should have when considering your application. And you can submit that electronically. We don't require any paper to be sent along with your application. You can scan it and upload it to your application. So in the application, we do ask specific supplemental questions. And this is to assist the admissions committee with assessing your application fairly. Okay, so if you could fill out those questions, that would be great and much appreciated. So the references. So we're looking for 3 references in your application. We're looking for an immediate supervisor, a person who is familiar with your academic work, and someone who is familiar with your professional experience and history. You will need to provide their full name, their place of employment, and professional email address of the referee. And keep in mind that as soon as you click on save or next in the application, an email is going to go immediately to that reference. There's no delay when that email is sent, okay? So make sure you've got the correct information in there. If you run into trouble with your references, definitely get in contact with me. And another pop quiz. Last one, I promise. So are paper transcripts required at the time of application? Yes or no? Great, thank you, everybody. Okay, and then which academic program should you choose for the EdD when accessing the application? Education or professional education? Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Okay, now it's time for questions. So I'm going to open the chat after I explain some things. So if you want to ask a question verbally, you can definitely feel free to. If you can raise your virtual hand, that would be great. And to raise your virtual hand, you would click on, I can't remember what it is. I've got a different one than you. I believe it's reactions. And then you can raise your virtual hand. I will call on you, ask you to unmute yourself, and then I will say, go ahead and ask your question. Okay, so if you don't have to verbally ask a question, you can definitely type it in the chat, which is now active. So we've got Jill. Jill, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, thank you for providing this session this evening. That's great.
Thank you.
I had a question about admission requirements. I know you said for the written piece you could use part of your thesis. If your MEd was courses only, is that still valid, or do you have to have gone the MRP or thesis route to apply?
So what I would recommend is take a look at the requirements for the writing sample and see if any of your papers meet those requirements.
Okay, but you can still apply with the courses only.
Yes.
MEd.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so for the questions that are coming in the chat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them out and then I'll respond to them, okay? And Lori, I'll get to you in just a second, all right? Thank you. So is this considered to be full-time? Yes, the EdD is considered a full-time program. Okay, and a lot of our students do work full-time. And Dr. Myers, if you need to jump in, please do so. Okay, Lori, let's take your question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there. Thank you for doing this session. I was just wondering, it's been a while since I've done my master's courses, and I don't know if I have a reference through that academic. Is there anything else that you would accept for that?
Dr. Myers, can I pass that one to you?
Sure. It might be that you have an employer connection who might know a bit about your academic type skills. So that would be considered important to have.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, so we've got a question in the chat wondering if there's an equity and social justice field available. Not at this time. There's not at this time.
This is an educational leadership degree. So people typically have experience in educational leadership, whether they're a school vice principal, principal, superintendent type roles in higher education. There are so many different levels of leadership that you might have.
Okay, another question in the chat here. I went to a previous EdD versus PhD program and you spoke of comp exams. Are those required for the EdD? No, they are not. The comprehensive exam is a PhD requirement, so it's not part of the EdD program at all. And Anna, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Could I address that first, Allison?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. There are milestones that must be passed in the EdD prior to completion. So for example, they're all course-based. So in year 1, course 4, there is an assignment embedded in the course that must be completed before you can proceed to year 2. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anna, if you'd like to go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you for this session. Hello, Dr. Myers. Now, listen, it's great to meet you. So I have a couple of questions as I started the process of the application. I reached out to my references and one of them told me they're not able to provide a professional email address. I mean, they are, but they're not because of security issues in the area that they work in. they might not get your email and they cannot send attachments, so they prefer to use their Gmail. Is that acceptable for me to submit with my application?
Yes, that is
Okay.
acceptable. So if they are not able to provide a professional address, I'll be honest, that is what we prefer, but we understand that's not an option for everybody. So we do accept personal email addresses. And please keep in mind that we do ask specific questions in the reference form that they fill out. And it's a link that they click. It brings them to an online form, and they do have the option to upload text of a letter. Okay. They aren't able to upload a PDF or anything, but it's just text that's in their text boxes that are filled out in the application.
Okay, that's good to know. And just one last question about the supplemental documents that we can submit. I wanted to submit a GMAT score. However, I am taking my test quite late in the year, so I'm afraid that I delay my application for something. I don't know the score yet, and I don't want to do that. Is that something that I can potentially submit afterwards if I'm proud of my score?
It's not required, and as soon as you click on submit on that application, we can't make any edits to the application. Okay. Okay, so someone in the chat is asking, how competitive is the admission for this program? How many students do you take each year? So we receive approximately 350 applications each year, and this year we're admitting about 80 students. So it is an extremely competitive program. So I recommend take your time with your application. Fine tune it as much as possible and follow the guidelines that are set out for the writing sample and the statement of intent.
And that 80 intake would be 4 cohorts of about 20 each.
Craig, would you like to take yourself off mute to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. So I have one of my degrees is in another country, and the transcript process is really long. So even before, if I didn't have the word about being accepted yet, would it be okay if I were to preemptively try to send that along, because it can take about a month or more?
Yes, that is not a problem. So we admit students probably maybe 2 months after the applications close, and there is time for you to submit those applications. We do this to save the applicants money.
Yes.
That's why I definitely push the wait until you find out if you're admitted. But if it makes more sense for you, you can submit those hard copy official transcripts.
Also, if we have a hard copy transcript that's unopened, that's sealed, like, because I have a few of those here, like, are we able to send that?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, I can? Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yep. Just don't open it. Stick that envelope in another envelope.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. Okay.
There are a gazillion questions in the chat.
Yes, and we will get to it, so please be patient. I'm just scrolling through. I found another one here. So synchronous class times are typically what time Eastern Standard? I'm in a time zone that is 8 hours ahead. So it does vary by instructor when those synchronous sessions are. Dr. Myers, do you look at the course outline? So can you take that one?
Sure.
Please?
Typically, they are held according to Ontario time, Eastern time, in the evenings, I would guess between 5 and 9, even as late as 9:30. We have students from across the country, coast to coast to coast. So instructors are very cognizant of the fact that 5 o'clock Ontario time is not 5 o'clock in BC. So they do work with students to try to find a time that is workable. We have instructors right now who are meeting on Saturday mornings, for example, and our international students as well. I think it is the evening here is 3 a.m. in China, or something terribly early time for folks who are out that way. So they work with the students.
Great, thank you, Dr. Myers. So somebody's asking, what happens if it's been over 15 years to help with receiving an academic reference? Can I pass that to you, Dr. Myers?
Sure.
Thank you.
You could try to reach out to folks, you never know. But again, if you have someone that you work with, especially since you're in an academic setting, likely, you might have someone who would know what those skills would be to be able to be successful in a doctoral program, and who would be able to speak to that skill set.
Great, thank you. So we've got another question in the chat. The EdD program is a full-time program. Does this imply that professionals work full-time or that the program itself is full-time? So the EdD program is a full-time program, but our students do work full-time as well. I recently completed one of the MPED programs, and I worked full-time and I went to school full-time. So we're looking at generally, a student will be working on their program about 15 to 20 hours per week.
And full-time is how we classify it. And so we use that language. So it might mean different things to different folks. But again, if you're working full-time, you need to be able to find 15 to 20 hours per week for 3 years to work on the program. And that's an average, of course.
Another question in the chat here. Can you please provide some information on what will be required of the referees? A letter, response to questions. I'd like them to know in advance so they can gauge time requirement. So I don't like this answer, but it's both. There are specific questions that they fill out, and it depends on if they are a professional reference or an academic reference. But there are specific questions that they are asked, and they do have the option to upload a letter as well. So if they have written a letter for you previously, they can respond to some of the questions, and then they are able to upload that, that letter as well. Okay. So here's another question. What happens if you don't have a leadership reference in the last 10 years to fulfill the academic reference?
Can I address that?
Yes, please.
I don't have an answer actually, but this is an educational leadership degree, and typically students are in leadership roles. It would be difficult for a student to optimize their learning if they aren't in a leadership role. So if you don't have that reference, that would be concerning. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So do you accept a reference letter in French? Dr. Myers, we are an English speaking university and department. We don't have a French, I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
I can help.
Thank you. Thank you for saving me.
The adjudicators are English speaking, and I don't know for sure, but I would assume most of them do not have French as fluent French as a second language. So I would ask that you put them in the references in English.
Thank you. So what are the fields for the EdD program? So the field is in educational leadership, and then we have cohorts in higher education, K-12, and community leadership.
Community leadership often includes folks who are in nonprofit organizations, again, leadership roles that involve educational responsibilities.
Thank you. Do you accept transcripts from non-Canadian universities? Does it require to be assessed by WES? So Western does not accept assessments by WES. What we do ask is that applicants provide an English, the original copy of the transcript, as well as an English translation from an official translator. Okay, so don't worry about Wes. Get the official copy of your transcript as well as the translated copy by an official translator. And you can upload that to your application. So another question here. I am currently doing my MEd and there are no exams. I really don't test well. Are there exams in this program? Dr. Myers, can you respond to that one?
Absolutely.
Please? Thank you.
I'm very glad to say that there are no exams in the EdD. It's project assignment-based work throughout the whole degree, including the final document, which is a dissertation in practice. And you may want to go to the website. You'll see some discussion of what that entails, but everything is assignment-based.
And I understand that. I'm also not good at tests. I totally get it. So another question here, are assignments individual or group? I think that they are both. I know that there is some group work in the program. The program is really relies heavily on a community of learning. So there is group work associated with this. Dr. Myers, could you elaborate further?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Some instructors may assign group work, but and it depends on the instructor. Some may have group activities where there's an individual grade component to it. Instructors work really hard with their students to develop a community of practice so that there's lots of interaction between students. There's also intentional peer learning opportunities, which we could say is group work, but it's not necessarily grades associated with that work. So for example, in year 3, students are encouraged to be critical friends where they read sections of each other's written work to give feedback and encouragement.
I like that phrase, critical friends. I like that.
Yeah.
So how many students are there usually in each cohort? We are looking at about 20 students per cohort. So another question here, learning technologies, leadership in a corporate environment, oil and gas training. Does this fit the community option?
I think it might. I think I would need more information to make a suggestion. And you want to explain it very clearly in your application if this was you, because you'd want the adjudicators to understand why you would be a good fit for the program, why the EdD educational leadership would be beneficial to you. That might be in your statement of intent, for example.
Thanks,
and if I could add one more thing,
of course,
a bit random. This is not a business degree, a business doctorate. It's educational leadership.
Great, thank you. So another question here. I have a Master of Social Work and I'm a full-time professor. Would I qualify? So while the admissions committee does look for those degrees, the master's degrees that are in the area of educational leadership or educational administration, the previous degree is only one part of the application, and the committee is actually looking at your application as a whole. So if you have a Master of Social Work, yes, you would still be considered as long as you meet the other admission requirements. Dr. Myers, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, we've had folks go through before who are who have PhDs, who are faculty in higher education, but they're looking for a degree in leadership. So, you know, there's just very different ways of approaching it and the benefits of it in different careers. I would like to add that this degree will not guarantee that you are able to teach in higher education. It depends on the university or college. It depends on the field. So for example, if you were to have an EdD in educational leadership, technically you'd be qualified to teach in this program. but you wouldn't necessarily be able to teach in the Faculty of Education in other areas with this degree.
Okay, so I have a question here that I'm just looking for clarification on. So the question is, I hear that only one applicant is selected to the EdD program per year. How is the selection process done? Sunday, if you could clarify your question, I will come back to that one. Okay, so here's another question. What is the character count or word count expected of the reference letter? So there's, for the reference letter, there's no character count that I've heard of. It is just a text box that the referee actually fills out. So they can, just the general length of a letter. There's no specific length that they've set out. Okay. So another question here, if our MA thesis wasn't written using APA style, should we rewrite and change the citations to this style? APA is not required. I actually think that's on our website. I'm going to take that down. So you do not have to follow APA style for your writing sample. Okay, when you come into the program, APA is what we use at the Faculty of Education. So you will be expected to write APA style when you're here, but at the time of application, your writing sample is not required to be in APA.
Excellent answer.
Thank you. So is the EdD program eligible to apply for OSAP? We don't have information about OSAP in this office. You would need to connect with the financial aid department or OSAP itself. I don't want to give you incorrect information. So you should connect with either OSAP or Western's financial aid.
Typically, students who have applied for OSAP who are EdD students are not eligible. But obviously we can't answer for each individual because, of course, as a full-time employee, your salary will impact that application.
So another question here, can I change one of the references after submission? If something happens to one of your references where they can no longer be a reference for you anymore, or they're just not receiving our emails, yes, you are able to change who your reference is after they submit their application. So you would actually log into the application system, and then you can view your application and you can edit your reference if you need to change who your reference is going to be. So here's another question. Can you comment on what your cohorts typically look like? Would it be unusual to have a student who is later career? Are you preferring students who are early to mid-career?
We have students who are in all stages of their career. And it's not unusual to have someone who's very early stage to someone who's very late stage. So, so absolutely all are welcome. If you look at some of the requirements, we require those who are admitted to have at least 5 years of work experience. And we're also looking at leadership experience. The adjudicators will look to see what leadership experience you've had. So typically this is going to be someone who's got some experience in their field. So they're not going to necessarily likely be, 22 years old. They could be, but not likely.
Great, thank you. So another question here. I was told you prefer international students over Canadian students. If that's the case, it would be very difficult for us in Canada to be accepted. That is, I'm not sure who said that, but no, we accept Canadian students. We do accept international students. It's not an issue for us to admit Canadian or international students.
Student applicants are adjudicated on their merits of their application. That being said, Allison, do you know about the fees that students would pay if they are international students?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but that is on the fee schedules page. Okay, it's broken down by Canadian or permanent resident and international. Oh, another question here. Are some streams more competitive than others in relation to the number of applications received?
Oh, that's a good question. I would guess that the higher education stream is more competitive. In other words, we have more applicants than we do the other streams typically. It changes from year to year.
Great, thank you. So another question here, what specifically are you looking for from professional references? Is there a criteria list? So I always recommend to applicants that they choose a reference who is going to speak of their abilities highly. Okay, this is an extremely competitive program, so you should select references who are going to give you a great assessment. Dr. Myers, do you have anything to add here?
Absolutely. You need someone who's going to say that you're absolutely amazing. And I think it's important to have the conversation with someone just to understand what they would be saying about you. Because we're wanting to understand that you will be successful in the program. We don't want those who to get accepted and then really struggle, right? Because that's not fair to the students. We want you to be successful, succeed, finish with your degree. So yeah, have that conversation.
Yeah. So somebody is asking for a bit further clarification. So somebody had emailed me about the program's position on someone who does not have a bachelor's degree. You mentioned that I should submit an explanation to the committee. So that is voluntary if you want to submit the explanation to the admissions committee. That's not a requirement. When you upload your academic history, when you input your academic history in the application, they're not going to be looking for your undergraduate degree or your bachelor degree. It's completely up to you if you would like to submit that information. It's not required. You won't have a transcript for it. So that should be fine.
We have had students in the past apply who, for whatever reason, have not had a bachelor's degree, and we're always wondering, well, how did they get into the master's? So if that explanation would be helpful for the committee in case they do ask.
Thank you. So somebody's asking, do you consider teaching a leadership role? Dr. Myers, can I pass that one to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
As a former teacher, I understand how much leadership is involved as a teacher, but typically we're looking at the leadership that is more formal, whether it's in a volunteer role or it's in an education system of some kind. So looking at high school, for example, you have the I don't even know what it's called anymore, department heads, vice principals. Elementary schools, there may be different roles that I'm not aware of. It's because of the conversations and you're applying your learning to your career and your experience. It's more difficult if you haven't had leadership experience to have those conversations and to get the full depth of the learning. Keeping in mind that the learning that you do looks at theory, research, and practice. And as you look at the scholarship, you're going to be thinking and learning about content that applies to a leadership role. So it's difficult to apply as a teacher. That being said, we have people who have been very successful in our program who have been teachers, but it's not a stepping stone to become a principal or superintendent, for example. Hopefully that answers the question.
What about if they're a professor? Would being a professor be considered a leadership role?
It's about the same thing. Professor does not, of course, there's leadership experience in there, It's more informal, so it would need to be clearly articulated. And again, it would be more difficult to have those conversations and that deep learning with a cohort if you have not had leadership experience within the context of your employment. So I'm not saying it's impossible, just that it presents challenges.
Great, thank you. Let's take a question. Keith, would you like to unmute and go ahead?
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Dr. Myers, I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on whether the doctorate in education actually does make you or allow you to be eligible to teach on a part-time basis, perhaps with the Faculty of Education in the future. I'm just curious about that again.
Sure. We cannot guarantee that this degree would enable you to teach on a part-time basis in any faculty,
Okay.
Or education or not. That being said, because it's an educational leadership degree and this program is in educational leadership, yes, you would be, but it's across the board. I can't say that it would. And we do that. We say that the same thing for higher ed as it is for K to 12. It wouldn't allow you to teach in a K to 12 BEd program, for example, in Ontario.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, so here's a question about the writing sample. Somebody completed their master's at OISE and their longest paper is about 12 to 13 pages. Is that okay for a writing sample? So your writing sample should meet all of the stipulations that are laid out in that document that I'm going to send you. It's a very in-depth document about the requirements for the writing sample. Some people don't have some people's writing samples don't meet the requirements that are laid out, so they end up having to come up with a new writing sample. Like I said before, this is an extremely competitive program and you should meet all of the requirements, whether they be the admission requirements or the supplemental document requirements.
And you could definitely revise it so that you add a few more pages. You know, especially if you've written it a while ago and you can add new research or expand upon certain areas depending on the topic. Yeah. 12 to 13 pages going into a PhD is not a lot of
EdD.
Sorry, EdD or PhD. I meant to say
doctoral.
Degree, actually, yeah.
Great. Heather, would you like to unmute yourself and go ahead?
Sure. Thanks so much, Allison and Dr. Myers. So my question is just around the course content. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm in the kitchen. Sorry. I'm curious. I'm curious about the kinds of topics that we'd be covering and the readings and what that typically looks like. Just wondering if you have sample outlines. Like, I'd like to delve a little deeper into understanding what I'd be doing on a weekly basis.
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't have anything at my fingertips right now, but you'd be looking at those who do research into educational leadership. There's many decades of study that folks pull from. We're looking into new research. The field is also expanding. Those who theorize about research, assignments are tied to the work that you'll be doing. So for example, in year one in particular, you're looking at the problem of practice, the problem that you're working on in your organization that you are looking to impact change with. And so as you read and learn about theory and research, you apply it to your work and you write about it, you discuss it, lots of readings. I think that, and looking at how, I think that's about all I can say off the top of my head right now.
Okay, and related to that, I'm sorry, like how quickly do you have to, like, do most people come into the program knowing like, this is what I want to do, this is the area I want, or is there any time for you to think a little bit about it before you hone in exactly on what it is you want to do?
Sure, and I'm sure a lot of people have a similar question. So in the application, you're going to, and the statement of intent, you may choose to discuss a problem of practice that you have in your work. And that's more to get an understanding of seeing whether you have thought about this and where that might lead you. Students, when they start the program, are then going to articulate problem of practice and keep doing that throughout the program. But as you read and learn and think and discuss, your problem of practice will change and grow and develop and deepen and change. Basically, we have students who are going into year 3 and say, oh, I need to add a bit more, I need to change it a bit, or I've read something over the summer that I want to adjust it to. So it's nothing is set in stone. That being said, by the time you enter the second summer, students typically have a solid, this is what the problem is, and this is how I'm going to think about it.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Heather. I'm going to we're getting a lot of chat messages, so I'm going to go to the chat for a couple of minutes, but I do see the 2 hands up. I haven't forgotten about you. So someone's asking, does the stream I apply for need to be tied to my full-time job? I'm a full-time faculty member, but I would like to tie this into my volunteer work as a sport coach educator. Good question.
Yes, I would suggest community leadership, because you're looking to, if the problem of practice is tied to that role as a sport educator. If the problem of practice is focused on your higher education role, then you would apply to higher education.
So your problem of practice and the stream that you apply for, the cohort that you apply for, does not have to be tied to your employment. It's tied to your problem of practice. Okay. So is the EdD program accredited for associate professorship position in higher education and fellowship?
There's no accreditation through the EdD and educational leadership. I can't say it has nothing to do with teaching, but it is not designed to enhance people's opportunities for teaching, if that helps.
Okay, let's, Jennifer, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to learn from you. I'm having a little bit of trouble in terms of picking streams. I'm a nurse by training, but I'm in educational leadership for my hospital, but I do also professor work into academic institutions. I guess my question is, my paper is very academic that I would like to present to you, but the cohort I believe I'll be going into is community. So does it have to tie in what I'm selecting versus what I'm writing?
So no.
Okay.
We're just, the purpose of the writing sample is to make sure you can write at that scholarly level.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And one final question, is there a template for the CV?
No, there's no template for the CV. Some students do choose to follow is it the CCCV? I don't remember how many C's there are in front of this. The Canadian Common, I think, is a Canadian Common CV. So CCCV. Does that answer your question? There's no official template. No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Back to your situation, Jennifer, whether you're thinking community leadership or higher educational leadership, just think through where you want to focus your work on. Because we had someone go through, and she's now teaching with us actually, who was also involved in nurse education, but also professorship. And I think she went through as a higher education person, but I could see how both would be applicable. But then you think about the conversation, the question someone had about which one is more competitive as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Lori, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to get a couple questions out of the chat here. So I understand that this program is intensive. However, are there breaks over the 3 years?
Good question for me. This is very intensive. There's no doubt about it. The breaks, and I'll go through them year by year. In year 1, actually all 3 years, technically you have a break around early to mid-December until early January. Year 3s will typically be doing work during that time. You have a break in April, first or second week of April until the 1st of May. And then you might have a few days at the end of June if you're in year 1. And everyone might have a few days before Labor Day. That's it. Year threes, probably we don't have a break until June. They'll have the whole month of June to catch their breath. It is intense, but if you remember, as we talked about the summer terms where you're fitting in 2 courses for year 1 in a 16-week period instead of a 24-week period. So it's you need to pace yourself and practice life balance type strategies, that type of thing.
Lori, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you.
Thanks.
My question is based around, I guess, admissions. I'm in a role that it is a leadership role. So I'm a teacher, but I'm in a leadership role within the board, and that's like with math coaching. However, it's only a 2-year secondment. So the way it works is you're released for 2 years and then you go back into teaching. So that would not last the whole time I'm in the EdD doctorate program. Is that something that is a concern when I'm applying, and something that would keep me out of the program or not?
So it might not necessarily be a concern for your application, but it might be a concern for your success in the program as a student. And here's why. You'll be focusing on making change in your work, and you need to have influence, and you need to have the agency to be able to enact that change. But if you're changing roles partway through, you're going to be working on a role that no longer is in your, you don't have the agency anymore. So yes, you would be able to be successful, but it would be more difficult than if you stayed in that role for a longer period of time, because you can actually enact the change. Like, you have that to motivate you, but also you're living that role while you're working on your degree.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lori. So someone's asking, are there changes from the entry requirements from last year to this year? No, the entry requirements are the same. Okay, I can't speak to future years, so please keep in mind that if you decide to apply next year, I can't speak to next year yet. I wish I could see in the future, but I can't. So be aware that we we do review this on a yearly basis. So if you are going to apply next year, I'd recommend attending an event or checking out our admission requirements page next year. Okay, so someone is asking, are the synchronous components set up as full group sessions, or is it individual meetings with the instructors? So it's both. You might have individual meetings with your instructors, and there are group synchronous sessions. Okay. When will successful applicants be informed, and will applicants be contacted regardless of whether they are successful or not? So as soon as we hear back, we understand that applicants are very eager to hear the results of their application. We communicate the admission decision, whether it's good or bad, accept or decline, as soon as we hear back from the admissions committee. We don't hold anything back, because we know that applicants are so eager to hear the results of their application. So I don't have an exact time frame of when applicants will hear back.
Likely around April.
Okay.
Because the application acceptance closes January 15th, and there's probably about a 2.5 months-ish processing.
So around April. So sometime in April. It might not be April 1st. It might be mid to end April. Okay.
Or end of March.
Or end of, don't tell them that, Phil. It could be the end of March. It could be April. But like I said, if we don't hold back the decisions. We don't sit on them for weeks at a time. We know everybody's eager to hear back. So if you haven't heard from us, chances are there's no decision on your application yet. Okay. Carrie Ann, you've been very patient. Would you like to take yourself off mute and go ahead?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I would like to find out if your master's was done in the UK and you're not sure of what the equivalency to a Canadian A average. Is there any way that you could find out prior to submitting your application?
So we do not do any conversions for applicants. That is actually done in a different department. But what I would recommend you do, take a look online. There could be a conversion scale online for you to see what your average would translate to on the Canadian grading scale.
Would there be,
and if it's sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that I was going to ask Allison if there's information on the School of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at Western. Would there be information on that website?
I haven't seen it with my scouring of that website. I haven't seen anything posted there. Okay. Carrie Ann, did you have another question?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know if by chance the equivalency is less than the A average, is there any consideration for that if it was like a research-based master's you did?
So all of the applications we receive, we do forward on to the admissions committee. We recognize that some degrees are graded significantly harder than others. So yes, the admissions committee does take that into consideration.
Okay, also is a postgraduate certificate could be used a part of your application as well? Or it's just the,
You can include that, but your grade calculation, your admission average calculation is going to come from your master's degree.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And how much intake does the program has per year?
So we receive about 350 applications and we admit approximately 80 students per year.
Okay, because I logged on a little late, so I'm not sure if that was relayed earlier.
That's totally fine. Yeah, we have people coming in and out. I can hear the dings in my ears.
Sorry, because I just finished my work day, so I was in between.
That's totally fine. And this webinar is being recorded, and I'm going to be sending out a link to access it when it becomes available. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. And if we have further questions, who do we communicate with prior to our submission?
It's myself, and I can be reached at info.graded@uwo.ca. Jane, can I get you to put that in the chat? I don't want to lose where I am in the questions.
There's a lot.
Thank you. Okay, so here's another question. Can the writing sample be in the format of an e-portfolio that meets the writing requirements?
Do you want me to do this?
Yes, please.
So the writing sample, you want it to showcase your ability to be successful in the program and write at a doctoral level. Obviously, we're not expecting you to write at a doctoral level before you start, but you need to show that you have the skills to be successful eventually in your courses. I'm not sure what an e-portfolio looks like, but we're looking for one document that has an academic, that is academic. So it could be something that you've written for another course or for your master's or that type of thing.
Great, thank you, Dr. Myers. So here's another question. Are students in this program eligible to apply for federal and Ontario student awards like SHRC or OGS? Unfortunately, no, because we anticipate our students are working full-time, and just the nature of the degree, it is professionally focused. But our research intensive, our PhD program, is eligible for SHRC and OGS. Okay, and we are going to have an information session for our PhD program. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it's in the same area where you applied for this, where you registered for this webinar. If you need any information about it, please email me at info.graded@uwo.ca. Thanks. So is primary or secondary research required for the dissertation in practice?
So EdD students complete their degree in 3 years. And so this is not primary research that you are doing, because you couldn't do it most likely in 3 years if it was primary research. So it's just secondary. I don't mean just, it is secondary research only. That means you would not be having to go through ethics applications. You would not have to be surveying or researching or asking questions or anything like that.
Thank you. So what is the ratio of candidates admitted into the program with first degrees outside of Canada? We don't keep those statistics. We, like Dr. Meyer said, we evaluate the applications based on their merit, and as long as the institution that you attended is a recognized institution, you are considered for admission to the program. So another question in the chat here, as this EdD is course-based, are we required to find a research supervisor? Is research part of the program? So no, you are not required to find a potential supervisor in this program. It is a course-based degree. It's a professionally focused degree, so a supervisor is not required.
You aren't doing primary research. And that is why you wouldn't need a supervisor.
Great, thank you. Let me just see here. I've got a couple direct messages. I just want to make sure that they're applicable here.
I think I do too.
Okay. I'm going to skip to a general one right now. So can you speak to the course content? What kinds of issues would we be exploring? Are sample course outlines available? I'm interested in the higher education stream.
Oh, I have a great example for K-12. We do not share course outlines. To give you an example from a K-12 context, I was speaking today to one of our instructors, faculty members, and she was going to do an exercise with her students whereby they're in a mock school board meeting, and they have to deal with a leadership issue. And so she's going to, so they don't know the leadership issue until they actually go to the course synchronous session that evening. So that they're going to be relevant issues. In our higher ed course, year 1 right now, they are talking about all sorts of different issues that are very relevant and current today. So one of their topics is mental health. Another topic is gender issues that are happening on campus, and Indigenous related issues, such as expanding Indigenous scholarship in the university. So as you can see, there's lots of different ways to approach them, and these are just some of the issues that they could be addressing. They'll be looking at leadership scholarship, what the research says about different topics. They'll be looking at different frameworks and how the scholars in the field would be assessing those types of issues. Hopefully that's helpful.
So somebody's asking, how many applicants are you expecting this year? I know you mentioned this earlier, but I would like to double check. Last year we received approximately 350. It could be a similar number this year. I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but I anticipate between approximately 350. And as a friendly reminder, we're admitting 80 students. So here's another question. I'm interested in the administrative aspects of higher education, particularly technology. Does the program focus more on the teaching and learning aspects?
Allison, do you understand this question to mean the teaching and learning of technology? Or the teaching and learning of educational leadership? Because the field is educational leadership.
So the administrative aspects of higher education, particularly technology. So it might be the use of technology in an administrative capacity.
So if I understand the question correctly, I would say no, it wouldn't be focusing on that. It's more on leadership, the role and itself. But students apply that learning to their different contexts, their own unique individual contexts.
And it would depend on the problem of practice, what area they are focusing on for the problem of practice. So like Dr. Meyer said, it's more the leadership aspect rather than teaching.
Jane, would you mind putting into the chat because I'm following the questions with Allison as well, of the OIP repository, because you can go and look at what other students have created in the past to give you a sense of some of the areas that the students have worked on.
Okay, so here's another question. If a previous degree is from Western, do we need to provide a transcript or can you access that information internally? So if you still have access to your student center, you can upload your web academic report. That's not required, but it might help out the department that's it might assist the department that's performing the preliminary assessment on your application. It's not required, but it would be nice to do. Yes, we can pull that information. This department processes thousands of applications for the entire Western campus. If you don't have access to your Western Student Center, don't worry about it. We can pull that information. So somebody's asking, can the leadership role be in a private or profit corporate sector? So it could be either. We're not looking specifically for people who are in private. We're not looking for people who are only in a volunteer-based position. So yes, you can apply if you are in a leadership role in a private for-profit corporate sector, but keep in mind that it's the program is in the field of educational leadership. And as has been said before, it does depend on your problem of practice, what area you're focusing on. Okay, so somebody here, I have more than 3 years of leadership experience at an international school outside of Canada, but I am currently a high school teacher in Quebec. Would previous experience be considered as a leadership role? Dr. Myers, can I give you that one?
Yes.
Thank you.
The leadership experience is important, absolutely, to the application. But similar to other folks who may not be in a leadership role when they're taking educational leadership, if you're not in, challenging for you as a student, because you're going to be looking at a problem in your organization that you have agency over. I don't know what else to add to that. Hopefully that's okay.
If you need further clarification, we'll get to your message in the chat. Just message us in the chat, okay? So somebody's saying, going back to the academic reference, I heard Dr. Meyer say that we can ask a professional referee to comment on our academic strengths from their perspective. If done well, is this on par with an academic reference, or would it be better to go back and find a professor who taught someone 30 years ago? Unfortunately, my thesis supervisor has passed away and other committee members are retired and they can't locate them.
Sorry, that's me. I was thinking.
I thought so.
Yeah. Yes, you would get to go to someone who knows you professionally, who might have knowledge of the skills that you would need to be successful in a doctoral program. Think about things like program management skills, writing skills, organizational skills, time management skills, academic writing. Notice I've said that twice. Those types of things. It would be more easy if you were in a higher educational institution, of course, for that person to give you a reference.
Okay, sorry, I'm just asking for clarification from someone. Okay. Okay, so somebody's asking, can you submit a written piece where you are co-author? You should be the sole author on your writing sample. This is outlined in the document that I've referenced that's on our How to Apply page. You need to be the sole author of the document, and it needs to meet all of the requirements that are listed. Okay, so somebody's saying, if I have an interest in K-12 educational governance, for example, at the Board of Trustee level, would that be relevant to the K-12 stream?
That's a bit of a difficult situation, and you would want to think about your agency with the organization, your agency of influence, because it is K-12, but it's also relevant to community leadership. And we have someone right now currently in year 3 in the program who is in a similar role, and this person is in the community leadership stream. I'm not sure how the cohort of K-12 folks who would be superintendents, principals, vice principals, et cetera, how that would have influenced her learning. So you'd really want to think about where that influence is. I think that's all I can say to that, Allison.
Great, thank you. So we've got another question here. Do you keep a wait list for situations where applicants are accepted, but they are not able to come? So yes, we do keep a list of people who are on the wait list, and that is communicated to you. Okay.
Should we talk about the information session that we might hold before acceptances are due?
I don't know, because it's a might. It isn't set in stone yet.
Make us do it. Sure. We say we're going to do it, we'll do it. We've been looking at holding an information session for folks who are accepted into the program so that they can have more information before they make that final decision. So that would be conveyed to you in an acceptance letter or email.
Okay. Okay, I think I've caught up on most of the questions. I've got a couple private questions that I will respond to. Oh, and we've got somebody with their hand up. Go ahead, Patricia. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. I just wanted to circle back to the question around whether there was a stream for equity and social justice. And I understand there isn't a stream for that, but the website talks a lot about equity and social justice, either as woven into the program or as part of the principles for the CPED consortium. And so just wondering if you could speak to that, Dr. Myers, as to how those principles are reflected in the program.
Thank you, Patricia. Yes, the principles form part of the foundation of our degree, and they are woven into all areas of the program, into the scholars we look at, in the discussions we have, the students that we invite to complete the degree, and the work that the students do in their problem of practice. Typically, we encourage them to look at challenges to equity, diversity, and social justice, for sure. And then in the writing of the dissertation and practice, there are expectations that students consider those, even if the topic or the problem of practice does not have to do with it directly. I say it, you know what I mean, the field of equity. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Another question came in through the chat here. How important is it that the writing sample be on an education-related topic if one does not hold a master's in education? So that's not required. We're just looking to make sure you can write at the scholarly level. You just need to make sure it hits all the points that are outlined in that document on the how to apply page. And when I send out the recording for the webinar, and it might be in a week or so, I'm going to be including these slides, which has the link directly to that document.
And definitely edit, proofread your writing sample, because you want to show the adjudicators that you have the skills to be successful with the writing. There's a lot of writing involved in this, in all doctoral degrees, this one included. Thank you, Liza. I never thought we'd get through that whole list of questions, Allison.
Neither did I. I'm like, oh man, I'm half an hour behind on these questions. I need to talk faster. And we still have half an hour. So if you have questions, please let us know.
Glad you could join us, Jill.
Yeah, thanks, Jill.
Yes, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And of course, if you have questions later on, and you may, half an hour from now, you may say, oh, wait, I wish I would have asked this. Definitely contact Allison in an email.
I've been at the faculty since 2013, so I'm a good resource.
Oh, she knows so much.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Glad you could join us.
Thank you, Lori. Jane, are you going to say anything? Share your wisdom?
Jane
You all did so wonderful.
Jane was so paranoid when I'm like, do you want to see the slides? Are you going to make me talk? Well, I'm not going to force you. No.
But I did know some of the answers.
Thanks, Tara. Oh, we've got another question here. For the writing sample, would we include the title page that has been used?
You could, it would give information, but I wouldn't bother. Just put, titles at the top of the first page. You wouldn't count it in the page count regardless, right? So it's up to you. Thank you, Tara and Judith.
Another question here. Do you require translations of transcripts in French? Oh, I've never been asked that question before. Estelle, can you email me, please? I'm going to have to find that out because Canada is a bilingual country. So I'm going to have to find that out for you. Yeah. Amy, would you like to take yourself on mute and go ahead?
Thank you, Allison. And forgive me if this question was asked. Truthfully, I had internet problems. I was one of those people bouncing in and out. Yeah. I hotspotted my phone. I'm sorted out.
Oh no.
So my question was around the writing sample that was 15 to 20 pages. I'm currently enrolled in my Master's of Health Professions Education at Queen's University, and none of our writing through the masters has been that long. So do you suggest creating a new document to get that 15 to 20 pages, or are you willing to look at like multiple essays?
Dr. Myers, I see your hand up and you're very eager to answer this question. I'm going to turn it over to you.
I was actually waving at the people who are leaving.
I thought you're like, I know.
I will answer.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest you write a whole new document because that's a lot of work. I would try to flesh out something that you've already written for another course or for your master's, and make it sure that it is at least 15 pages. So it might be that you take it off and into it, expand on one section or next steps or something, right? Instead of having to reinvent the whole thing.
Okay. I think my longest is 6 pages, so it's still a lot. Thank you very much.
Okay, so just keep in mind that students are looking at 20-page assignments throughout the program. Not necessarily all of them are, but they probably have one in each course that's that long. The final document is around 100 pages. So it might be a good exercise to take something that you really enjoyed writing and expanding it to the 15 pages. Like I said, pick something that you liked.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's what I'll do. And it's not that I'm not capable of writing that many pages. It's just I'm meeting requirements, and
for sure.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
So we've got a question in the chat here. To follow on the same question, Jen, can we edit a paper? For example, could I take a couple different chapters and put them together in one paper to submit? In that case, should I submit the table of contents, all references, or should I redo it all together? Anna, did Dr. Myers answer your question, or is that one still on the table?
A little bit about the idea of editing the paper. Yes, I'm just unsure of, should I just leave the table of content to give an overview of the entire paper and maybe just highlight what I've included, or just redo that table of content to just reflect what's actually in there?
If you need the table of contents, you may not.
Okay.
And again, it's to show that you are able to write and be successful.
Okay.
So if you took two chapters, for example, and combined them somehow.
Yeah, it's my MRP was actually a business plan. So it is applied research, but it's kind of split into two, and the middle contains a lot more about like the financials and whatnot. So I can take what's not relevant and be left with about 20 pages, but it takes a little bit of editing. So I'll just repurpose it then.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You don't want to write it from scratch, but you don't want to do that much work, but the editing would be important for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Amy, would you like to take yourself off mute?
I just forgot to put my hand down. Forgive me.
Okay. I wondered if I forgot to put your hand down as well. Okay, your hand is down now. I won't call on you again, Amy. No pressure.
I see something about the writing sample. Remember, it's one aspect of the application. So it's not the only thing that folks will look at.
Julie, would you like to take yourself off mute and go ahead?
Thank you so much. So if I can provide a little bit of background as to my idea for the organizational improvement plan, I recently took a workshop as a foster parent on human trafficking in Ontario, and I had no idea how prevalent it was. And the speaker is the supervisor with Thunder Bay Counseling. And I'm also teaching human sexuality at our local college. And I had her in as a guest speaker, and she said, "Thank you so much. I have such a hard time getting into schools." And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm currently doing my thesis research with the director of the school board for the public board in Thunder Bay, and he's on board with what I'm doing. It's not related at all. But if I could connect all the pieces and get her and our OPP and our local officers who are leading the work behind human trafficking and prevention and education. If I could get them into schools and raise awareness, could that be a potential area in the community stream maybe?
It sounds amazing work.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing work. And yes, in the community stream. Something to think about though. And the way you've presented it is so what everyone does is everyone looks for the solution before they have been able to really clearly articulate the problem, right? And that's why we focus on the problem of practice, particularly in year one. So by the time you got through the 3 years, you might find that the solution might be different, but I mean, it's wonderful work.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your feedback. Okay, and for everything tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Glad to help.
Thanks, Julie.
No more questions.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Amy. I did moderating as a side job for some of the instructors here. So I got really good at telling people what to do.
She's good at telling us what to do.
I can speak firsthand.
I trained Jane in her job. So Jane definitely knows.
Looks like Jamal, you have a question.
Actually, it's a comment really. I've been to other, let's call them info sessions. And your session, whether I apply or not, whatever, I have to make these decisions on my own. But the information that was shared today, whether it's from both you and Allison with your wonderful style, or from the let's call them potential students, is amazing. Particularly for Julie. The human trafficking part, I teach at 3 universities here in Ontario, and that is always in the back of my mind. You really touched my heart, Julie. And whether you become a student or not. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. That's great feedback. Thank you so much.
I agree, Jamal. Julie's work, it'd be awesome to see it go through the EdD program. I really would. So the impact our students, our graduates have had on the world, on education, on young people, on little people, it's just amazing and wonderful. Lots of feedback for you, Julie, too, in the chat.
Yeah. Hi, somebody's got their hand up. I'm not sure of your first name, but go ahead if you'd like to take yourself off mute.
Sorry, my computer went.
Oh, no.
It's Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer. What can we help you with?
Just, I guess, a final question. And I've been doing a lot of work. Is there a page limit on the CV? Or like how far back should I go? Is it from the very beginning? I think my unedited CV is at 50 pages at this point. So I'm just like, that would kind of be a little bit too much, I think.
I'm sorry, was that 15 or 50?
50.
Whoa.
it might be a lot of, I'm probably making notes as I go, that sort of thing.
Right. So definitely focus on the leadership aspect of your CV. The admissions committee is going to be looking for that. Dr. Myers, do you have anything to add?
You might want to summarize. For example, I'm assuming with a 50-page CV, you have publications. So it might be that you summarize and provide half a dozen examples instead of all of them. So that it's a little, you want to entice them to look at it as opposed to overwhelm them.
Yeah, I get overwhelmed looking at it.
Obviously, you're very accomplished.
Yeah.
I think it was just the roles I've been in. It's been very different. Education, innovation, and the healthcare space, and so
right,
it's a little bit different compared to what's around, I think.
Yeah. And a resume might be more conducive to the application. And of course, I don't know if, without looking at it, but you might want to consider a resume or a combination of both. Because no one's marking no one's going to pay attention to the format in the sense of how you styled it. It's just that more they want to have clear access to the information.
Okay. Is there like one-on-one consultations at all? Or
if you have further questions, please email me. Please feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat again here.
I sent my email. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
We're down to 14 people.
Down to 14. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask Allison, Dr. Allison, do we actually need a first degree transcript for the
Yes.
program?
So any degree that you have completed at a post-secondary institution, so bachelor's, master's, or doctorate level, you need to provide those transcripts.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sunday. Okay, if nobody has any further questions, I'm going to call it a night. We did pretty good. We're 15 minutes to spare.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us and sticking it out.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You
Thank you as
too.
well.
Bye.
Bye.